Mateo.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here in New York. For those of you also joining in, we have the live stream as well. Either way, we are so excited that you could all join us here for today for Bloomberg's Building a Future-Ready Business. Now, we've all heard people say the business landscape is changing, right? And every time I hear that, I want to laugh because you always say, hasn't it always been changing, right? And that's the way you think about it. But it's true. I mean, things are always changing. I mean, right here, you think about it, people talking about the business, technology. Technology is changing things. Artificial intelligence is changing things. And when you think about the term hybrid workforce, that's also starting to bring on a whole new meaning. You think of hybrid workforce, people working from home and working from the office, right? It became really popular during the pandemic, right after the shutdown. And I got to tell you, the shutdown was really a certain time, right? We've all been through that time with the shutdown. I remember, quick story, I was working for CBS News Radio. I was freelancing at the time. And we've all been thrown this new technology. Here's the new equipment you need. Our children have been thrown all this new technology. Here's what you need to do, and you have to learn to work with it. And just every little thing from working from home and doing a live radio broadcast and having to throw a comfort over my head when the lawn guy came, you know, having to have my daughter come in and say, Ma, I want a snack, but I'm in the middle of a radio news live hit. So all these adjustments we had to make. Well, now the adjustment to that hybrid workforce. Now that hybrid workforce is taking on a new meaning, right? It's becoming the human and the machine working together in an AI world. And sometimes it can be a little hectic like it was during the shutdown, right? Because times are changing. But what it's doing, it's causing leaders to have to rethink how they think about work, how they think about productivity, right? In a whole new way. Asking certain questions like, what are the certain skills that people need, you know, to make them more competitive? What are the new tools that we need to bring more value? And at the same time, what's becoming obsolete? What don't we need anymore? So today you're going to hear from a lot of those different business leaders who are going to be talking about how they're building that AI real world. Some of the things that they're doing, they'll be giving you some insight into that. For all the questions that you have out there for today, that's what we'll be talking about. Because yes, the business landscape is changing. It's evolving. But at the same time, it's what makes this moment ever so exciting. So before we get things started, I do have a couple of announcements to get through. First off, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Kyndryl. Without them, we would not be able to have all these conversations we're going to have on the stage today. They also have an announcement to make, so stay tuned for that. Next up, I want all of you to be part of the conversation for today. How do you do that? Look on your table. You have QR codes. You can scan those. There's QR codes on the screen. All you do is you scan it, write in your question, and we will try our very best to get those questions answered for today. And for those of you who partake in social media, you have to remember hashtag FutureBiz. You have to remember that. It's Future Ready Biz. It's B-I-Z, okay? Future Ready Biz. And over at Bloomberg Live, we'll be posting different updates throughout the day from the event, so you can check there. And if you hear something today, maybe you take a picture with someone who you know, an acquaintance, or maybe you made a new friend, please don't forget that hashtag and over at Bloomberg Live. All right, all that said, it is time to get things started. Please welcome to the stage Jamie Rutledge. He is the president of Kyndryl US.
Thank you, Lisa. Welcome to Bloomberg Live. Thanks for joining us. Explore building a future-ready business. Top of the mind for all of us here. First, a thank you to all our guests, everyone here. Thank you. Call out to everyone online, so thank you for doing that as well. And to special thanks to the guests that will be speaking. Bank of America, Verizon Business, Microsoft, American Express, Amazon, and MasterCard. And of course, Lisa, thanks to Bloomberg. What a beautiful venue we have here. For those unfamiliar with Kyndryl, We're the leading provider of mission-critical enterprise technology services. We just celebrated our 4th birthday. Yeah, 4 years. We design, we build, we manage, and we modernize mission-critical systems that the world relies on every day. We've guided leaders, our team has guided leaders through a whole series of different technology waves. There was internet. Yeah, our people were, I was there. Our people were there. Cloud, big data, and now there's AI. Go to that. This moment that we have in front of us, this moment with AI, it's incredibly significant. Agentic AI specifically, I see this as an evolutionary technology. Evolutionary is the right word. It's doing things that I have to admit I did not believe until I saw it. As leaders, and that's why you're here, we are at a tipping point. I have a stat that I wanted to read out to you. 87%, that's a lot, right? 87% of all leaders agree that AI is going to transform roles and responsibilities in their organization over the next 12 months. That's what they believe. However, 29% say their organization workforce is currently ready to leverage AI. That is a tipping point. That's an opportunity. It is a risk, and that's why we're here today. I believe leaders who lean into AI native, they'll thrive. That's what Kyndryl believes. The agility by design, this AI at the core of processes and workflows. My colleague, Michael Bradshaw, he'll come on stage soon and he'll share exactly what that looks like. But first, we do want to hear from you. For those in person, if you look around, there's a bunch of Kyndryl name cards. We're going to be around. We'd love to talk to you. So please, thank you for that, and thanks for coming. Your time is incredibly valuable. It's a gift, so we appreciate that. For those joining online on the live stream, thank you also for your time. Thank you for your focus. There's a QA function in the tool. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I'm sure you guys will figure it out, at least explained it, right? And, tell us what's on your mind. Please, we'd love to hear from you again. This is going to be a great afternoon. Look forward to it. Let's dive in. Mandeep, I think it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. It's great to see everyone here. I'm incredibly delighted to have a great panel here today. To my left is Devika Bhattacharya from Verizon, and Shoma from American Express, and Michelle from Bank of America. So really a lot to talk about when it comes to technology, transformation, and trust. And I want to start off with, the fact that all three, the one thing it's common is you all are consumer-facing businesses. And there is a lot of anxiety and, excitement both at the same time in terms of what generative AI brings to consumer-facing businesses. So from your perspective, and maybe Devika, I'll start with you here, what kind of knowledge work do you think is getting impacted the most when it comes to generative AI and this whole wave of AI agents that we are excited about?
Yeah, thank you, Mandeep. So it's great to be here. So actually in Verizon, we do have a consumer division as well as a B2B division. So as we look at our AI solutions, because I sit on the AI Council, we look across both. Mm-hmm. And with the consumerization of AI, that comes into businesses as well. So what we are seeing, though, is there is anxiety, sometimes anxiety through what people read in the media. But one of the things we believe is actually AI augments work. So when we think about generative AI, we've been able to really raise the value that workers bring, that people can use. So a lot of repetitive work, things that can be done, can be helped with generative AI, like to remove cognitive load, especially in customer care. And there are many functions that generative AI is very helpful with. And now what we are seeing, as you mentioned, going into knowledge work, which requires reasoning, which requires decision making. All of that is also helped tremendously by agentic AI. Like my team is an engineering team. So they research topics, they analyze it, they decide, they make decisions about it, they put the information together. So using agentic across all those different kinds of activities is what's really exciting. It's not fully mature yet, but it's really improving in leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I have a lot of follow-ups, but I'll have Shoma talk about the same first.
I echo a lot of things that Devika said. What I will say is for our consumer-facing business at American Express, our brand promises security, trust, service, and all of this is based on a culture of empowering our colleagues and our customers to have these improved experiences. And there's been a huge role that generative AI has had to play. You know, we have travel counselors across 19 markets using generative AI to make recommendations to our customers. And what's exciting is they have greater confidence, higher satisfaction, because they have these tools at their behest. We have developers using AI coding assistants. Again, you know, it's not just productivity. It's like Devika said, it frees up colleagues to do higher value work, to be creative, and it also drives up satisfaction. So in a number of ways, we're seeing a transformation. The only thing I'd say, Mandeep, is AI is not new to American Express.
Yeah.
We've been using it since 2010, so it's an evolution.
But LLMs is new. I will contest that. You know, the whole LLM wave has started in the last 3 years. Would you agree with that?
Indeed, and I will agree also that the pace of evolution has been exponential, but this literacy and augmentation of AI for human work is
That's
not
right.
new.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Michelle?
Yeah, look, I just had, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
A really great conversation. I mean, I think we start with the customer and the client and the associate experience. And at the end of the day, whether it's generative AI or traditional AI or any technology, it is about either improving and personalizing the client experience or improving productivity of our associates and really giving that time back to do what? To spend time using their brains to do higher order work where differentiation or decision making is critical. And actually for our client-facing associates, they get to spend more time with their clients. And that's really the most value-added activity of generative AI. In our case, you know, we spend $13 billion on technology. $4 billion of that every year is initiatives, and a lot of it is Gen AI for us. We have over 50 Gen AI use cases. 20 of those are already in production, and we see a lot more opportunity down the pipe.
So I already kind of gleaned a couple of things that you guys mentioned. One was around coding agents, and the other one was customer service, where I think the chatbot experience is becoming more and more palatable in terms of, you know, the quality of responses. Would you say, like, that's the big sort of ROI that we have seen from this wave of generative AI?
Yeah, so that's one of them. So obviously the virtual assistants can handle a lot more complex tasks now and can understand natural language to respond to it. But generative AI has helped, like Michelle said, in many ways. So even if you do call in, for example, Verizon gets 100 million calls a year. When you call into an agent, they have to look through lots of pieces of information. They have to, in real time, be able to respond, listen to the customer, understand the sentiment, provide new information. So an AI-assisted desktop helps them as well. And then all the conversations can then be summarized. You know, so a lot of the work, it's not just the virtual assistant. There's a lot that comes in. And there's definitely an ROI associated with customer care. But then we see ROIs in other parts of the business as well, where in terms of like building out our networks, you know, simplifying the interfaces with customers. So there's ROI in multiple.
Can you maybe explain that point? Like, because you guys have so many data centers, and I feel when it comes to Verizon's footprint, that's part of the value prop, you know, in terms of how you connect the different data centers. Has ROI helped on that front in any way?
So So when we talk about data centers, it's the hyperscalers who are building out the data centers. What Verizon is primarily doing is connecting the data centers. Verizon provides the communication services. What we also have is, because Verizon as a telecom has a distributed infrastructure, so we look at distributed computing. So we now have real estate, power, space, cooling across our network. So for inferencing is where the benefits come in. For training, we still rely on the hyperscalers and other private data centers for the massive amounts of compute that's needed for training. That is not where Verizon operates, really connecting those data centers and also inferencing at the edge.
And you're inferencing using your own data. I guess that is how you're customizing the model.
And also it partnerships with others who have GPU as a service, who can now bring those those instances to a distributed environment. That's where we are starting to see.
Shoma, maybe can you maybe talk about an anecdote where you've seen the workflow change completely or partially because of generative AI? Whether it's a chatbot or the coding agent. You mentioned coding agent, but curious, how did it change the workflow overall from an end-to-end perspective?
Thanks for the question, Mandeep. I did want to say that American Express is looking at AI not just from an efficiency point of view. I think most of us agree it's an embedded capability, and the true ROI of what we experience with this technology is scaled impact across multitudes of use cases. I want to give you an example of how generative AI is transforming customer experience and powering growth. Just to sort of open the aperture a little bit from just efficiency. We use generative AI in the Amex search on our mobile app, and that makes recommendations. We're increasing the relevancy of responses by 32%. We're increasing click-through rate by 18%. And that itself is such a huge lift.
You want to share which LLMs you are using?
That's just one use case, but there are other use cases as well. We use generative AI as part of the Tech Care chat that services our colleagues. There are many such use cases.
Great. And Michelle, I don't know if you have anything to add to this, but I have a different question for you as well.
Sure. I mean, really quickly on ROI, right? Are we enhancing the customer experience? Are we increasing productivity? Are we driving revenue? And are we reducing operational expenses and operational risk? Those are the 4 foundational pieces of every generative AI case that we look at, because we ground it in our business processes and how it can deliver on one of those 4 pillars. I think there are so many use cases. Erica for us is a great example, right? First virtual assistant in financial services in 2018, we implemented that. Now that didn't have generative AI, but it does now. So we've built these significant, scalable, reusable enterprise platforms that started with natural language processing and traditional AI. Now the same platform, Erica, performs for our associates in mobile banking. It now performs for our business banking clients in our Cash Pro application, for our Merrill clients in Ask Merrill and Associates. So we're extending that platform across businesses and use cases. And we have an Erica for employees that is answering virtual assistant questions like password resets, information on policies, procedures. So it's really about, for large businesses and even small ones, you've got to think about that scalable platform that you're adopting these AI and generative AI use cases onto, because it won't all be generative. It may be a combination of more traditional AI agents coupled with a generative AI component, and always a human in the loop to take that work product and make a decision with it.
So it sounds like you have layered on a generative AI component on top of existing products. Like, was there a point where things were slow to take off because the existing systems just didn't support, layering on that sort of technology, or that hasn't been a hurdle?
I mean, for us, we have very intentional enterprise design up front, so I didn't have that problem. I mean, in the last 5 years, we've spent $1.5 billion on the data foundation. That data foundation is our customer data, our client transactions, our behavior data. You have to have that data to enable generative AI at scale at the accuracy and quality of a company like Bank of America.
What I
right?
meant to specifically ask was, did you have to do a lot of prompt engineering to make things work?
Well, one, the models are getting better and better, so that's good news, and they're getting smarter and smarter. We do prompt engineering, and there was the conversation around the software engineer. There will be no more software engineers. I think Jensen said that at NVIDIA. The reality is the role of software engineer is changing, and when you talk about a use case, we're using GitHub Copilot, 18,000 users, 20% plus efficiency on code development. What's very surprising is all of the other use cases that software engineers have applied to generative AI capabilities like GitHub beyond code generation. They're reverse engineering requirements. They're generating test script, automated test scripts. Now we're doing code modernization. So smart engineers evolve it. For the average user who may not be great at prompting, there is ways to engineer higher quality outputs. We do prompt optimizing. So you might get a prompt in and you might put it into an optimizer that optimizes the query that goes to the model. You have RAG retrieval, get better context of data and embed that and send it to get more accurate responses. So there is a role for the software engineer in those steps of how do I optimize both for the context the model has, the training of the model where necessary, and also those pieces along the way that just improve accuracy and quality of your software.
Yeah, and I want to add to something Michelle said, because it's really, really important. A lot of times people talk about productivity and they think about doing one task faster. That, I think, is a very limited view, because what really happens is you end up doing your work differently. So, you can bring a competitive edge. You can change the way you respond to something. So I'll give an example from myself. So within Verizon, we use a lot of Google Workspace tools. So all of us have access to Gemini Deep Research. So now we can get access to a lot of information in minutes that would take us hours to do. But it's not just saving the hours of work. It's changed the way we work. The way people prepare for meetings has changed. The way people approach meetings have changed. So I think we have to look at it broader than just the little lanes where AI is applied. The work itself has changed, and how people work is changing.
That's a great point.
And that's actually why starting with the business process and then understanding the roles and how job roles and the processes change is so critical to really maximize.
That's the transformation.
But it sounds like there haven't been any big friction points in terms of bolting on generative AI, at least for the project.
I think in the case of American Express, we have invested a lot in reskilling and talent and training and change management. We've invested with leadership leading, making AI center stage as part of our talent strategy. So I think I think with change comes friction. With exponential rate of change, there is the need for agility and speed. But I think taking stock of your talent, using AI as a way so that our talent can thrive, that's been the approach. So
that's a very good point, because it is a culture change, and not just for technology.
It's not just learning the tools. There's a cultural aspect.
And is this a bigger change than some of the prior transformations that you have dealt with?
Definitely.
It feels like a bigger change.
It does.
Yeah.
For me, so I've been in this industry for over 30 years. So I've seen changes from when we were moving to the commercial internet. So that was a massive transformation. The smartphone adoption was a massive transformation. In the IT world, cloud computing was a massive transformation. But it's been the pace of change is unprecedented, because we start with a pilot. By the time you're done with it, you're trying to get adoption, things have changed. The models have improved. Every 2 to 3 months, you see a step function improvement. So I think the pace of change, the rate at which the advances are happening in this field is something that I feel is different from.
I do see a question on responsible AI, and so I want to come back to you, Shoma. You mentioned search. So In search, do you think it's a limitation that you can't really reproduce the results that LLM is giving you? And, because it's a probabilistic system, the same prompt may give you a different answer, so how do you track or sort of make sure that it meets your high standards?
It's a great question. We talk about keeping pace with the change and making this change, all this innovation available to our colleagues. So one of the things we've done at American Express is really invested in creating an enterprise enablement platform. We don't just willy-nilly try out models. We have an AI firewall. We have controls that check for hallucinations. We monitor the accuracy and the consistency of responses. And as far as possible, we have a human in the loop. So there's a lot of investment in creating this reusable foundational technology that allows us to unlock generative AI across a suite of use cases. And there's a question here about responsible AI. That's a huge part of the responsibility we have as financial institutions. So by creating this enterprise foundational platform, we're able to embed compliance, risk governance, frameworks that ensure that we can keep our customers' trust.
Anything to add around
I would just say,
responsible AI?
of course, as a bank, we're a highly regulated industry for the benefit of our clients, and that's very important. Their trust is critical to our success. We have a very rigorous risk management
So no hallucinations
framework
in
process. Well, you have to control for that, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you think of the building of Gen AI, the software development lifecycle and the controls you put in line, what data, what context are you giving it? How are you engineering every step of the process? Those are classic controls. Accuracy. You have to make sure it's not biased. You have to make sure you're addressing intellectual property and security risks and transparency and explainability and reliability. I think the way the environment's changed, human in the loop is a critical control. That's the last mile, right? Code of conduct to make people aware of that is the last mile. But I do think people underestimate the expectation of, look, you may have had a traditional model where you did detective controls on a monthly or quarterly basis. Mm-hmm. Now you're doing continuous monitoring and controls.
Right.
And continuous traceability and monitoring that goes into the production support processes and the operational processes. So the rigor in those areas is much more heightened than maybe some of the more traditional AI detective controls.
Yeah, and Verizon is not in financial services, but being a telecom and carrying some, customer data, consumer as well as B2B, exactly the same posture, which is, making sure that through responsible AI, we are protecting customer data. We are making sure that, privacy, explainability, all the different areas are cared for. And I sit on our AI council, and we've identified that what's the security risk, what could be the legal risk, what's the operational risk, all these different, and we have a very structured approach to ensuring that we've looked at all of them. Now, because AI is not deterministic, not 100% deterministic, we do understand that as well, but we have to always balance the risk with making sure that we have the right controls in place.
So you said the models have constantly improved, and that's proved to be a challenge, as well as it's exciting to see so much progress. Is there any emergent capability that you feel you are very excited about and you want these LLM companies to roll out as soon as possible?
So the one that I'm most excited about is actually, it's probably more like maybe 5 years or so out. So it's not just an LLM company, but if you think about it now, because you had mentioned prompt engineering, today when you're interacting with an AI agent, it's either on your phone, a device like a tablet, a laptop. Very soon, there'll be more wearables, sensors, edge intelligence everywhere. So it's not just, you're not just going to be being very specific about intent and context, to a device. There's going to be this ambient intelligence all around you, so it sees what you see, it knows what you know. And that can sound a little scary, but it doesn't have to be. Like if you don't remember where you parked your car, you know, you can be told that. But that is where we are going. That is what's bound to happen.
So you're saying edge capabilities are good for Verizon's business.
Edge capability is good for everybody. And by edge, I don't just mean Verizon's edge.
Yeah.
You know, there's devices and sensors everywhere that are building in this intelligence, you know, into their fabric. So it's going to be all around us, not just in our devices.
Show my emergent capability.
That's scary, Deepika. But well, I was gonna say something that I think is around the corner, and I'm really looking forward to it for our businesses. Is open weight models, open source models. OpenAI just released a couple of open weight models. Super excited about that. Speaking of responsible AI, that puts the responsibility in the hands of the institution that's using these models. You know, we can control the biases in the neural network that these large language models run on. We could use our own data to ensure better accuracy and relevance. So I think it's just around the corner. I think one more thing I wanted to say is I am looking forward to more observability for all these models. I think that's something that is also soon going to, you know, bear fruition. But these are the things that I think about open source. Yeah.
So I do a lot of control function work. So the thing I'm looking for that is not quite there yet is more integrated test harnessing and end-to-end automation of the traceability, debugging, and it moves into the continuum of the production support and ongoing monitoring process. There are lots of tools that do pieces of it. There is nobody who has an end-to-end solution that is sitting right beside the developer, building all that multi-agent traceability, debugging, and monitoring, and then routing it into production with your CI/CD cycle. So I know that's not like the sexiest thing in terms of Gen AI. It's critical. I think the other is, and there's some of it going on, but look, this is really costly work. The large language models are, if not used in the right way, are expensive to run, right? Yeah. I think a lot of the LLM providers and deployers are doing a lot more sophisticated multi-agent switching. So take the right prompt and put it in the right model. Because if I only needed a small language model, if I only needed a lower cost answer to get as good or as accurate results, don't charge me for going against the LLM. And I think the world of optimizing cost is going to really need some maturity in that space, both from the companies who are deploying and the third parties we work with to deliver.
I'm sure the folks from the model companies are taking a note of all the requests.
That's what I was thinking.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we had. Please join me in thanking my fellow panelists.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Well, Michael, that was a great panel. And I think it gave credence to Jamie's opening remarks about how so many leaders, the majority of leaders, are investing heavily in AI innovation. But Jamie also mentioned something else, how many of them do not feel ready to manage the risks inherent in AI or even unlock the real value. It feels like AI is changing so fast that transformation now really feels constant. How are leaders keeping up?
Well, and I think the stat that Jamie shared was something on the order of 87%. And this is from our Kyndryl Readiness Report, and he mentioned tipping point. 3,800 respondents, C-suite, CEOs, COOs, et cetera. 87% recognize this is going to change the way work happens in their companies in the next 12 months. Yet only 29% think they have the right skills. So this is part of the challenge that we think people are really facing. And the other element of it, frankly, is it's the normal transformational challenges that companies have had. So, and I'll throw out another stat from our readiness report that is frankly shocking to me as a career practitioners. 95% of the participants that responded, they would redo their cloud strategies if they could do it over again. So think of how much money has been spent in the last decade and a half, 2 decades on cloud, and how much money is being plowed into AI. Oh my God, I would love the $1.5 billion to go do a data platform. And there are a few companies that have the money and have the pace setter kind of style to do that. But not everybody does. And I think that's what we're seeing. The reality is a lot of companies are struggling to find their way.
But why do CEOs feel so unprepared to manage these risks? What are you seeing?
A lot of it goes back to what we heard in the first panel. What you're hearing from them is a lot of what we call pace setter behavior in terms of alignment with senior leadership teams. A lot of this goes back to, again, my statement around transformations. And if you look the last several decades, how well have companies actually performed in those transformations? And a lot of it goes back to, do you have alignment within the senior leadership? Do you have alignment to vision, a business strategy, how your technology and your business strategy comes together to drive those business outcomes? When you don't have that alignment, you will not deliver on the transformation. And that's the same thing here. And whether it's dealing with your existing landscape, so Michelle referenced, $1.5 billion spent on their data platform. She's exactly right. You have to have your arms around your data. You have to have your arms around your ecosystem. I'm surprised to Mandeep's question that they didn't say they had challenges bolting on some of the AI capabilities to that existing landscape, because we do see those challenges. And that's why we think they're very challenged. You've got skills. You've got, frankly, the existing landscape. You've got the changing regulatory environments, sovereignty discussions. So a lot of change. And the last element, it was also referenced in the last panel, culture. You've all heard the saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So our belief, and this goes, I think Jamie referenced an announcement. We did announce today that we announced recently in July an agentic AI framework. And then in October, we filled out that a little bit more for folks to understand what that meant. And today, we really drilled into the workforce element of that. So it's an AI-focused workforce organizational change management and experience. And why? Because as you heard from some of the folks before, the nature of the work changes. Think about the person that 80% of what they do today is going to be done by agents. What are they going to do in the future? Are they just going to do that 20% of the work that's left? Or, and whether you're talking about people that are doing actuarial work, whether you talk about people that are lawyers, as we were talking about before, we believe this is fundamentally going to restructure roles and the workforce and the entire dynamic of how you're going to attract people to your company. So that's why we invested in putting these capabilities together. Obviously, you're not going to define this day one, because you have to identify the workflows that you're going to address and then how that is going to change. And as you think of it as this way, as you stack those workflows up in aggregate, that's what's going to drive that change. So we've set this up in a way that we're able to help our customers understand that change that's happening where they are as they continue to drive that change, so they can really execute that incremental strategy really from a baseline of understanding how to bring their people with them.
Well, as you said, Michael, we could talk about this for 3 hours, 3 weeks
Yes.
even. That's all we have time for today. I'm so sorry, but congratulations on your announcement. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Kyndryl, for supporting and making this event possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
What if the key to unlocking your competitive advantage is inside your data and infrastructure? The right partner can run your systems while reimagining your future with AI. Kyndryl is that partner, with technical insight and strategic foresight, pairing AI expertise and experienced human instincts. We run and reimagine the mission-critical technology systems that power the world's leading businesses. Unlock your inside edge.
everyone doing? Good. We're going to start having a little bit more fun now. All the serious talk is done, and that's why we have Bill here. And I'm going to start with a personal story. So I moved here 4.5 years ago from Singapore. Those of you who haven't been there, please go. It's utopian is the word I'd like to use. And I came here, I had colleagues from Adobe. I worked with Adobe in my past life, and they told me, you're not going to get a bank account, so you start with a credit union, and then you open a bank account. And I was like, of course I can get a bank account. I work with Bloomberg. They'll give me a letter. And I did get a bank account, and I went to Chase, to the branch to open an account. The guy asked, do you want a checkbook? And I sized him up, and I laughed internally, and I said, well, I wrote my last check when I was in school. No, of course I don't need it. I'm good, thank you. 2 days later, I go back, and he's laughing at me because I need a checkbook, I need to pay rent, and there's no other way I can do that. So from there to here, I'm sitting with Bill Borden discussing agentic AI in financials. I'm sorry, it's a long stretch, right? I can't get a simple payment movement without having like a check. And we're talking about how agents are going to change our lives and all of financial services will be automated. So we have a lot of work to go from there to here. And thank you, Bill, for helping us understand what the hell is going on, really, right?
That's right.
So we're talking about a move from cash to code. And we're not talking about just LLM models. We are talking about reshaping how organizations work, right? How many of you guys are working in financial services? Can we see a raise of hands?
Oh, good.
We have a lot of sympathy in the room now, right? So tell me, Bill, how has the narrative changed? You've seen this happen from so many years, right? How are leaders thinking about AI now, which is different from what we were seeing, say, 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, it is fascinating that an industry like financial services, based on risk management and being regulated, is actually moving at pace around AI and the implementation of it. We just came out with a study a couple of days ago. We partnered with IDC to do a study to talk with several thousand executives around the world, and of that group, and this is across multiple industries, 68% of that group said that they are moving forward with some form of AI. And there is a group, which we're going to call kind of a frontier group, that was farther out on the edge, that was actually driving 3x the ROI of the slower movers in that group. And we started to look into the dynamics of that frontier firm group, and 31% of that group happened to be financial services industry companies, which is rather amazing. And 70% of that frontier group was also in the next 6 to 7 months talking about rolling out very specific AI applications and capabilities, not just horizontal productivity things, but very specific things around business flow, business processing. And so the pace is moving, and it's moving fast. And if you think about coming out of COVID, I think it was mentioned earlier, pre-COVID, but this industry itself was actually typically a slower adopter of technology. It was not the first industry to think about moving to cloud. COVID happened. And
I hope it's not the last one.
It's not the last. COVID happened, and then a very regulated, very risk-driven industry actually had to make very fast decisions. Right? You had to roll out 90% of your organization with tools to actually work from home. You had to risk accept things. You had to move through security compliance and governance structures very fast, and make decisions very fast that you wouldn't normally do. And I think there were some learnings and skill set coming out of that, because after COVID, you saw this very big increase in terms of cloud usage, and that actually set the foundation for actually thinking about AI usage now.
Absolutely. So I think in my past life, which was about 5 years ago, I was a banks analyst. And one of the things that I've noticed across the board is traditionally how banks or even some of the other financial services vectors have grown is by throwing people at a problem, right? Oh, you want to add a mortgages division? Hire these many people. Oh, you want to open up prime services? Hire those many people. That mindset shift of how you scale using technology, and I think you raised a very valid point, that first that technology stack or the shift to cloud is the first step that you take to then leapfrog or charge your AI journey, right? Mandeep keeps talking about AI agents day in, day out, and that's what he did with you here before this panel as well, right? you also mentioned that, Bill. How do you see that changing financial services?
Yeah, I'll go back to this concept of a frontier firm, and we've been doing a lot of work around that in research. We did a workplace index study, and again, there's this notion that firms that are on the outer edge of actually getting returns and productivity out of AI are actually starting to think much more practically about not just using AI to actually take away task work, but actually thinking about how do you infuse AI into the fabric of your company. And you heard it on stage with some of the companies up here earlier, and thinking about how you're going to do that at pace and scale. And what's changed has been dramatic, right? In 23, we just learned about the idea of having access to large language models that you can deal with in natural language discussions and the democratization of that. We just started talking about agents in January of this year. January, that's 10 months. And now we're actually talking about, when we poll executives around the world, 70% of them are saying that in the next 12 months that they will be actually implementing some level of agents into the organization. And so there's this notion of this, what does it mean to be a frontier firm and actually to move forward at pace and scale? And it really is coming down into seeing these patterns. One, you've heard a lot about it earlier, right around a human plus a co-pilot, or someone who's going to supplement your work. And there's many examples of that out in the marketplace. But now we're moving into humans working with agents.
Absolutely.
Agents being a part of your workforce. And now the third phase of that is having autonomous agents working in control of a human.
So I think you raised a very interesting point about just reorganizing the organization in terms of how are we structured, how are the departments structured, how do we process information, what is the pipeline, right? Like how do we operate on a day-to-day basis? That needs to be rewired, which is very uncomfortable, by the way. And banks are by nature risk averse and everything, there's friction, but that's by design because we don't want to get things wrong, right? The agentic piece is really fascinating for me because I cover payments now, and agentic commerce is what all the companies are talking about, right? And I don't know how many of you caught the product drop with Visa, who showed, or actually Google did something similar as well, right? Who showed that when you go and make a purchase using an agent, so like someone goes and, right now all of you, how many of you search using ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or any of the LLMs? Personal shopping, guys. All of you do, right? Now imagine taking the next step. All you need to do is, I need to make this trip. Can you go and find out what are my hotel options according to my preferences without having to kind of repeatedly explain everything like you do to a new intern, but they figure out your preferences within a couple of interactions and they book the trip for you, right? So that level of comfort, I am fine with it. Like, this is amazing. We do that with all our travel. But how many of you actually make the booking using, they let the agent book that trip for you? How many of you will be comfortable if the agent or LLM would go and use your card on its own to make a trip booking for you? Can I see a raise of hands?
A few.
See, exactly. When I saw that video, I was spooked because I'm fine with discovery. I don't want to use my card to make a payment, even for coffee, honestly. Like, I'm not comfortable with that idea. But we are building that confidence. It's just insane, like how, when you're searching the kind of text that comes along, the things that these companies are doing to build trust. So that is really fascinating. In terms of the banking services side of things, how much of a comfort do you think we are developing with that sort of autonomy, or how long do you think it'll take for us to get there?
Well, yeah, you heard the previous panel from an IT perspective talking about the rapid change. You know, accepting, leveraging, thinking about how you're going to get scale and productivity out of technology is nothing new, right? Using AI is nothing new, but it's the pace of what's changing that really has organizations trying to figure out how to actually harness it.
Yeah.
And harness it at an enterprise level, right?
Yeah. So let me put it this way, like between the experimentation versus an ROI focus, like where are we on that? Like how comfortable are banks with?
It's still both, but it's very clearly not just in just how many use cases do I have and how am I doing POCs and testing. And you actually heard it, I think, from Michelle talking about how much they've rolled out in production.
Yeah.
So 24 was all about hey, how do I get use cases? How do I think about my environment? How do I think about how I bring LLMs into the enterprise structure? How do I think about security, risk modeling, compliance around it? And let me do a bunch of use cases. 25 has been dramatically different when you talk to executives. They're like, no, how do we actually start to move forward?
Yeah.
Right? And the pressure is coming down from senior executives and boards to say, how are we actually going to be enabled to actually move at pace and scale so that we are differentiating and on that frontier? And actually, you're seeing banks talk like that,
Yeah.
which is remarkable.
Yeah.
In terms
No,
of
when
how
you
they
go
wanna do
into
that.
meeting rooms, I'm sure you go like, did you have this much discussion when you were implementing Microsoft Word? Right?
Well, there wasn't as much scrutiny, put it like that. Right?
Yeah.
People weren't looking at the ROI of Word and Excel as much as they're scrutinizing the ROI of using a Copilot.
Yeah.
So I think people are starting to get over that, and,
Yeah.
and you've heard some major executives talk about it, right? And CEOs talking about it. Jamie Dimon recently talking about, hey, I spend $2 billion a year on my 145,000 employees that are using some form of AI, and I'm clearly comfortable that I'm getting the return back. So they're all about enabling to actually be ahead.
Yeah, I think those trailblazers in banking particularly have taken things quite further along, right? Like building that comfort with the followers that this is doable. We are moving on to the main part of our discussion, which was around human transformation within the context of AI disruption for financials, right? I have another question, right? This topic hits closer to heart because I work in financial services, and however much you want to believe everything that kind of goes on, there is a risk, like, how many of you actually feel empowered using AI in doing your work day to day? How many of you are like, okay, this makes me feel like, yeah, I can do my job so much better? Let's see a raise of hands first there. That's perfect. And how many of you feel like, oh, you know, will I have my job 5 years, 10 years down the line? Let's see a raise of hands. We're among friends. We can be candid. I will raise my hand. I know that my job will probably not be the same 5 years, 10 years down the line. That thought has come to my mind. Anyone? No one? Everyone is very secure in their skin. That's amazing. No, but that's the other part of it, right? Like how, when AI transformations are happening across organizations, how are they thinking about talent? And you talk day in, day out with executives. There is so much focus on productivity. So let's start there first. Like, how much of that discussion is productivity at the moment, and where are we in that cycle?
Again, you heard it on the panel before. It starts in productivity because many institutions are looking for savings to reinvest. And so the idea of productivity and low-hanging fruit around driving productivity and being able to take cost out has always been a part of financial institutions' tech strategies because
Yes.
your budgets don't always keep increasing,
Absolutely.
so you've got to reallocate. So that's going to be there. But the idea of finding revenue opportunities, actually reinventing how you engage with customers and partners, the idea of what that means in the marketplace to compete, the idea of breaking down actually what your service is and how they're offered in the marketplace. And as you were talking about before with agents, and if you look at other parts of the world that are more advanced with using super apps, where you live in the super app, you don't live in the banking app, you live in the super app. So the distribution of financial services and what that means, you're getting
For sure.
disintermediated from how you engage with customers, but you've got to be understanding what that model is and how your products are going to show up.
Yeah.
Your agent example was a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how is the banking payment services in that agent structure going to show up?
Yeah.
So now you're looking at competing on a different level.
Yeah. No, and for sure, like we have a long way to go there, right? Like the one conversation that I've heard from banks is they're looking at how they can change it into a support function, from a support function to a revenue generating function, right? How do you cross-sell more of the bank using your call centers, using your support, like, or customer relations agent force in that sense, right? But again, just coming back to the whole headcount issue, and I hear you, like, but how many in the audience actually feel that their firm's headcount will increase because of AI in the next 5 years, say?
No.
No one. And how many of you think it will decrease in the next 5 years? So that's some food for thought, right? Like right now, at least what surveys we've conducted, it seems like there is a lot more positive hiring bias when it comes to AI because we are building those capabilities and all of that. But when we reimagine banking, how will it look like when we have juiced out the initial low-hanging fruits from the AI transformation? So like what will the middle office, front office, back office look like?
Well, institutions are thinking about that because now you have the ability to completely break down structures. So we're working with one institution where they are looking at their onboarding process, and they have retail banking, commercial banking, small business banking. Across all of those systems, there's 350 plus applications that are involved in the onboarding process. They're looking to streamline that, break down that, re-engineer it, and actually put agents around it to actually structure what data you need, retire a bunch of those applications, but they're more interested in the experience they're going to create around the individual or the corporate that's actually engaging. Because now you're going to be engaged in the right products on day one. It's going to be fast. There are going to be insights that are brought to you right away. And there's going to be forward thinking around things that you might already be needing that you haven't thought about that the bank's going to start giving you analytics and insights on. So there is a cost piece to this, but, and you heard it on the stage too, people are very much thinking about what is the experience going to be? How are my products and services going to show up in life experiences, not just when you show up at my branch or at my website or on my phone application. It's going to be very different in terms of how people are going to be using agents and how
you're getting me all excited, Bill. Like, seriously.
Be involved in that, right?
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I saw the hands saying that jobs won't increase, but when Excel came out, people thought that Excel was going to kill financial organizations, right? Their financial segments of companies actually grew.
Wow.
When Excel came out. If you look at the numbers of people in finance right now. So
that is true.
And 10 years ago on LinkedIn, the amount of job descriptions have changed dramatically on LinkedIn over 10 years, and we're expecting that 70% of the jobs that exist today are going to have new skills related to them in the next 2 to 3 years. So we don't know what kind of new roles are going to come out.
I'll give you one more example that you can quote around this. So same thing with payments, right? Everyone thought with digitization there'll be less revenue to go around. But actually, the number of use cases have multiplied. Like earlier, you'd just go and swipe your card at the restaurant. Now you pay with the card to Uber, and the Uber pays the driver, and the Uber pays the restaurant. So there are 3 transactions happening instead. So the number of transactions has gone up because of how tech has kind of evolved, right? But a very valid point in that context, Bill, is what should the next generation of bankers be trained in? Like, how do you think about skill development? I think I'm not really ready to end my career. I'm somewhere in the middle. Like, what should I be learning and doing more?
Well, you have to be getting immersed in the technology to understand what it can do and what it can think. And right now, we're actually in an early stage where we're just engaging with the technology, asking it questions. You heard about prompt engineering. The reality of it is you're going to be working with these co-pilots and agents in a way that they're going to learn about you, learn about your data, learn about your experiences, and you're going to train it to actually ask you questions as a leader, right? You should want something asking you, why are you doing it that way? Remember when you did it with this customer, how positive it was. Why don't you use it in this scenario? Remember when you set up the meeting structure, you needed these 3 people. Remember to do that. That's what we're ultimately training with these agents in terms of how they're going to give us much more richer insights. So think about it as intelligence on tap. That's what you're building and enabling. And if intelligence is on tap, then how are you going to think about organizing your business to not be hierarchical by function, but organizing humans and agents to actually drive the outcomes that you want, right, to deliver for your employees or for your customers? That's the thinking that's happening right around what's going to happen. And agents are going to be part of your organization. They're going to have to be checked in. They're going to have IDs. They're going to have permissions to what systems they can access. They're going to be part of your group. So the talent that people are looking for and is coming out in surveys is people are actually thinking about who they're going to hire to actually have the mindset to manage agents. Who are you going to hire to have the mindset to actually train agents? Those are going to be really interesting skills to actually support business decision makers or people that need insights to serve their customers differently.
That is fascinating. So I actually signed up for a prompt engineering course. Guys, don't waste your time. Go that way. We're almost close to time, but I can't let you go without a rapid fire round, Bill.
Okay.
So do you use AI in your personal finances?
I do. I use it to look at spending patterns across different statements from credit card companies.
That is amazing. Okay, I need to do that. I don't do that. If AI had a seat in the boardroom, what question would it ask the CEO first?
What tools are you using to get immersed in AI? Because if you don't understand it, if you don't understand the power, how it's used, how can you guide strategies around what you're going to do with your company?
My God. So the board is going to, okay. You spent decades in finance, obviously. What is the one human skill that you think will rise because of the increasing use of AI?
There's going to be a different level of what collaboration means. And so the skill between how I can harness humans and the creativity and the final responsibility of humans, but also understand how I can actually re-engineer things with agents and combine that, that's going to be a new skill.
There's a movie around that, right? Like, how do you make friends with the agent? Interesting. Okay. What innovation in payments or commerce has excited you the most?
Well, you talked about it. I think.
Oh. Are you going to buy your next car using... Okay,
Yeah.
no. Too early.
Too early.
Are you going to buy a car in the next 5 years using agentic commerce?
I don't know if it'd be a car, but I'll definitely buy something. I mean, you have Bing now actually that can actually be on alert, be on price alert if you want to buy something. You can set
Yeah.
that up in Bing today. Now you're going to have an agent to actually make the purchase or negotiate with another agent
Yeah.
to make a purchase.
I encourage every one of you to go and check out that product drop. It is just fascinating. Like, just to even imagine that, from inconceivable to wow, I think I can get behind this kind of mindset. One last question for you now, Bill. What is the one lesson that financial leaders can learn from Microsoft's own journey in AI transformation?
You know, it's not just using it internally around how you're going to find productivity, but what you're going to find is the product development area around how you build your products and services to offer customers is going to be a massive way to think about how you inject AI into that. Because if you're not thinking about it that way, your customers are going to say, hey, I already use this particular Copilot, or I use this particular app. If your products aren't engaged and showing up there, you're going to miss out.
We have companies that are already working on that, right? But it kind of brings you back to the whole first principles, like rethink, reimagine how you're doing everything. Thank you so much, Bill. Such an enlightening conversation for me, at least. Thank you. Thanks. You've been a lovely audience.
So many interesting conversations so far. Hope you guys are enjoying it. We're going to get into the anatomy of how the workforce is changing. And we've been hearing a little bit of that throughout each of the panels. First, I want to introduce you Lucrecia Bogranova. She is with MasterCard, and Sarah Rhodes, she is with Amazon. Before we get things started, I want you ladies to explain to the audience what exactly your role is so they get a better idea of where you stand in the company. So, Sarah, you are the Global Workforce Health and Safety. You are the head, the vice president of that. So explain what that role entails.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having us on the panel today. I really enjoy these type of events and being able to speak so much about things that we're passionate about, including technology. Specifically, my role is I have the privilege of leading a team of over 10,000 safety professionals who are responsible for the health and safety of over 1 million employees globally. And one of the many things that I am so excited about in the role and that I enjoy is being able to apply technology to make for a safer workplace. And so things like large language models, machine learning, computer vision, AI, these are not new things to Amazon. We've been using this technology over the years, but specifically in my role to apply that now in the safety space and engineer that out globally is so exciting, and we are excited about leading the way in that regard when it comes to technology, the intersection of technology and safety.
All right, and we're going to dig into all of that.
Can't wait.
Lucrecia, talk about your role. You are the Chief Talent and Organizational Effectiveness Officer. Explain that for me, please.
There you go. We'll do that. Well, thank you for having me. I don't think I've ever been to an event where I was maybe the only or part of the few HR people. So I'm loving this. I promise I won't geek out too much on HR during the meeting today, but basically what I do is I lead the team that is responsible for future-proofing MasterCard from a talent standpoint. So what I think about my role is we need to make sure that, kind of like the future of MasterCard is taken care of from a talent, from skills, capabilities, culture, and leadership. So I lead a team of now 10,000 people, but 300 incredibly talented individuals that basically take care of the employee life cycle, right? So everything from hiring, onboarding, learning, managing, upskilling, reskilling that we're going to get into, and making sure that, again, that we have the leadership, the culture, and we're creating an environment where everybody can thrive.
All right, excellent. So let's start to dig into it now. So we've been hearing about different topics throughout the panel, how the nature of work is changing, right? We've heard about workforces shrinking. We've heard about roles changing. We've heard about people having to change the way they think before they go into a meeting. All this stuff. Sarah, I'll start with you. How are you meeting these changing times?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, we're really leaning in on technology, and we're using it to engineer out risk across our global operations. So, for example, when we look at things like processes that require repetitive motion, we're able to apply technology to automate those processes to remove that risk and then use our workforce for more technical roles, because it takes people in order to maintain that level of automation and technology. So we've evolved over the years. I've been with the company now coming up on 15 years, and our landscape looks much different now than it did 15 years ago, but in a very good way, especially given the scope and breadth and scale that we have across the globe.
Now, Lucrecia, talk to us about the different skills that people need in the workplace, and then how are you showing them how to achieve those skills, about upskilling?
You got it. So I think some of the, and some of them, I think they were talked about in their prior panel, right? So when I think about, some of the skills that are becoming in growing demand, I would talk about maybe the technical skills and then the human skills, because I think both of them are becoming like equally important. So definitely in the technical skills, I think that, kind of like AI literacy, data fluency are becoming sort of like baseline. I think traditionally maybe we were looking at them more in the context of highly technical roles. I think now the expectation is that, you're going to have some level of fluency on the AI and data side across any type of role or any type of job family. And then, of course, there's like the human skills that, traditionally we used to talk about those skills like the soft skills, and definitely the softer skills are becoming the harder and the more critical skills, like learning agility, adaptability, curiosity, collaboration, critical thinking are definitely becoming incredibly critical. And I would say probably things like, learning agility, adaptability becoming a competitive advantage and a differentiator, not only at the individual level, but then also at the organizational level. So, for us at MasterCard we definitely look for and we nurture both the human and the technical skills, because we think that, we'll need a knowledgeable human to really unlock the power of new technologies like artificial intelligence.
So is it changing the way you hire as well, too? Would you look for people to hire?
I think you're definitely starting to look at, those skills in a different way, right? When you kind of like, you started to see them prevailing a little bit more in your job descriptions, or you're scanning the talent in the marketplace, or when you're doing like assessments. And then the same thing when we're starting to think about, how we upskill or reskill our employees, right? I think there's something about making sure that our people are future ready. How do you really take care of, concerns that people may have as it relates to feelings of FOBO, right? Kind of like feeling of potentially being obsolete. So there's a lot about, like, if I think about like AI, right? So it's something that we know that we need to make sure that everybody is sort of like feeling much more comfortable with that technology, and making sure that they're sort of like, feeling empowered and enabled. I think there were a couple of questions as it relates to that, right? And really seeing AI as something that is sort of like augmenting your role, like your well-being, your productivity, your development partner. So we have, from a training standpoint, right, we think about it in kind of like 3 tiers. So if you're interested in thinking about how you can start getting sort of like AI started within your workforce, right? So first of all, we think that every employee, regardless of the role that they have, has to have a minimum level of AI literacy, that is really critical, to give people the confidence they need to experiment with this new technology. Then you start getting a little bit deeper and to say, hey, depending on the type of the role that you have in the organization, if you're a software engineer, if you're a consultant, if you're in sales, how do you use the AI in the context of your role? And then last but not least is really more about, how do you really sort of like upskill or reskill for new emerging type of roles? So, we believe in being very transparent with our workforce and, talking about how is AI going to change your role, and what are some of the, how can we more proactively upskill you, reskill you into roles that are becoming in higher demand, or skills that are becoming in higher demand in the future. But, one of the things that I would say, and I think it was talked about in the prior panel, is we've learned that, underpinning all of this is the culture. Like, you need to have a culture where people trust the technology, because people are not going to use it if they don't trust it. So we find that, the quality of the culture that you create, right? Are you creating an environment where people feel like they can, experiment responsibly, right? That they are given the environment to sort of like test and learn and to collaborate with this technology, I think is really paramount to drive, I think, the levels of adoption that we all want to see with these new technologies.
Excellent. And keep on that note of culture, because I'm going to come back to you with that in a second. Sarah, I want you to dive into some specific examples for the audience. So you said health and safety. So what technological advancements have you been working on over at Amazon that have really helped out?
Yes, I have a team of engineers, and we partner very closely with other engineering teams within Amazon. And I'll give two specific examples that I think can help provide some context. One technology that we've implemented, particularly in the past year, is called Proteus. And basically, it's a robotic drive, an autonomous robotic drive, that is able to coexist with our employees on the front line, on the shop floor, so to speak. And what was once done manually by an employee moving, for example, a cart of packages from point A to point B, now a drive, a Proteus drive, basically lifts the cart and moves it and delivers it to the employee. So it just removes an incredible amount of manual movement, saves time for everybody, and also it helps to either reduce or eliminate injury risk as well. So that's one example. A second example that we're humbly proud of, but we've rolled out globally, is called Dragonfly. And Dragonfly, the reason for the name is the Dragonfly has really good vision and can kind of see in all directions. We like to use different names at Amazon. And so from the palm of any employee's hand, they can enter safety suggestions, safety concerns. That then goes directly to their manager. Their manager needs to respond within 24 hours. And it provides that direct feedback loop between the employee and the manager. And we've made it to the level that now an employee can even rate the quality of the manager's response. Think of it like a rating, a 5-star rating. And the importance of this tool is not only the direct feedback that we receive directly from our frontline employees who know exactly maybe where the opportunities are, where the innovation maybe an opportunity. We can now use AI to glean insights globally. So not just from one particular site or location or one particular geography, but I can now use AI to pull any sort of data from around the world to see if there's common themes. And then we apply our programmatics to engineer out that risk or engineer out those themes. Some of the very best ideas are the most simple as well, that we would have maybe not otherwise known at a broader scale if it weren't from the application. So that's another example of how we've applied technology in a very simple use case way for the user, but how we're using then AI to pull those insights.
Yeah. So is it a simple use case? Because what's the process like? Like when you first introduce these things, you hand it over and you say use it, and people are saying, what is this? How do I, what's the process like? What's the process like when all of a sudden robots are going around, the floor next to workers? And explain that, some of the challenges.
Well, change management, I think, as many people in the audience know, especially when you're doing it at scale, it can be a challenge. And so that's why communication, first and foremost, explaining what is happening, why it is happening. And a common term that I use with my teams is simple, scalable, and sustainable. So it needs to be very simple for the user and also the person who may be teaching or communicating about it. Scalable, so ideally we do things across geographies and parity as much as possible. And sustainable, so it needs to be able to repeat in order to sustain that, because even sometimes the best of ideas, people may be excited about it for a week or a month or a year, and then it dissipates. But when we really want something to sustain and truly drive continuous improvement, it needs to maintain that. So the communication is key, and the simpler that we can make this technology, the better.
Okay, and something, Lucrecia, you talked about before. I'm going to go because there was a question from the audience too. How has entry-level hiring changed a little bit? Because you kind of mentioned that, how you're looking at hiring a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, definitely, obviously, we're sort of like leveraging AI within our hiring practices. But I would say, definitely what is changing in terms of, I think everybody, we're talking to an Amazon person as like an Amazon customer, right? I think everybody's looking in their personal lives and the same in their professional lives, right? A little bit of the similar experience that you look for in your personal life as well, in terms of like this hyper sort of like personalization and customization, right? So something that we have in terms of like for a job seeker, right? Like we have a website where people can actually, be served or like basically identify different types of opportunities depending on kind of like the skills they have, the skills they want to learn. So like a much more personalized sort of like experience across sort of like the employee life cycle, and definitely starting with your kind of like talent acquisitions, like your interviewing, you name it. But definitely there was something, I think, in the question about also learning as well, right? How can you create learning that is much more sort of like personalized? So I think that's something that has been incredibly critical for us. I think going back to the conversation that we were having about how do you get your workforce that is like super ready. So that is something. And how can you do that sort of like at scale, right? I think in the past we always thought that, hey, kind of like scale and personalization were two things that were contradictory to one another, were not possible. But that is something that, at MasterCard, we're definitely driving, higher levels of sort of like personalization at scale and connecting employees through, platforms like, our AI-driven talent marketplace to different types of opportunities, and could help close some skill gaps that they may have and connect them to like, different types of opportunities like a new job, like learning, like a mentor, a volunteering type of experience, or learning content to help sort of like bridge that skill gap. But I think it does it in a way that is much more personalized and sort of like meets you where you are in your journey.
Now, were there any challenges you reached as far as upskilling workers or having them to learn these new skills that you were talking about? What challenges, what roadblocks, what advice can you offer to the audience who may be going through the same thing with their employees?
I think that, it's like something obviously very consistent in all of the conversations we were having today is like the speed of change. And I think from a talent standpoint, I mean, obviously that represents incredible amount of change. You have to really think very critically about like how the talent needs are changing as the demands of the business are changing. So, I think that probably the agility and the flexibility of the workforce has never been more critical. So what we're doing at MasterCard is we're taking a much more skills-based approach. So we're focusing more on skills, sort of like as a factor to make decisions across the employee life cycle, versus more traditional parameters like degrees, right, or experiences, because we believe that when you focus on skills, you can sort of like create much more agility and flexibility, and you can be able to like hire, redeploy, upskill the talent in the organization much faster to meet this kind of like changing needs of the business. So that would be something that I would say it's a practice that definitely helps quite a bit with that. And as I was saying earlier, right, an example of that is our talent marketplace, where we have like 35,000 of our employees that, based on the skills they have versus the skills they want to build, they're connected to different types of opportunities. And what I would say is, some of the early successes that we have seen from the platform, like really reinforce that when you focus on skills versus other parameters, like you can really democratize access to opportunities, and you can really open up probably career paths to people that they actually wouldn't have had, or you can create much more flexibility in your workforce, right? Because your needs of tomorrow may not, will be served by different skills that, and that you like, so that you can sort of like be much more proactive about upskilling and reskilling those people that you need in the future.
Good. And we want to talk about the future, too, because I want to see what future trends you guys are seeing. Before we get to that, when I sat down, I kind of go through everyone's bio. And Sarah, something stood out to me from your bio. You have a background as a U.S. Navy fighter pilot. Okay, now that's not something you see on everyday bios. Now, how did that role, first of all, thank you for your service, but how did that role prepare you for what you're doing now at Amazon when it comes to safety, I'm sure?
Yeah, actually, there are a lot of translatable skills from aviation into the role that I'm currently serving in at Amazon. And I think as the audience knows, the margin for error in aviation is so small, but the consequences can be so high. So in aviation, it's so important that you get it right. Processes, procedures, standard work, solid training, definitely a proactive safety mindset. In aviation in general, it is very open when it comes to calling out safety concerns, suggestions for improvement. And so now in this role at Amazon, of course, we're not operating in that type of environment, but at the same time, I've applied and I've worked with my team to apply a proactive mindset to safety. So staying ahead of risk and incidents before it even becomes an issue. And we do that then by engineering out risk. So, an incident or accident cannot happen if the risk doesn't exist. And so that's, I think, probably the simplest way to say how I've translated at least the safety mindset from aviation into now our very large global workforce. And so just for context, in the U.S. we have over 700,000 employees, which is around twice the size of the U.S. Navy. So there's some translatable things there just in terms of size and how we do need to make sure that we are doing things in a very scalable way, like I mentioned.
Now, as we look a step forward, Lucrecia, how else do you see the workplace changing? Like, what are you keeping an eye on, that you think is on the horizon next? What's keeping you up at night when you sleep? What's on your mind?
Well, we talked about the reskilling, upskilling of the workforce for sure. I think the other piece, with that, probably looking at how do you rewire all of the people experiences being AI first and equally inclusive. The other one I think was talked about in the prior panel too is kind of like AI-driven work transformation. So obviously we're talking a lot about the workforce, but then when you think about how the work will continue to change, work redesign as you start thinking about this blending of the human and the digital worker. So how you start thinking about how organizations will be designed in the future, definitely beyond the org chart that we know today. Flatter organizations, more network-based, kind of like combination of like skills, tasks, and this blending that we were talking about of like humans and digital workers. And I think in the middle of that is, the future of leadership. I think we talked a little about culture, but, the future of the leader. So what does it mean to be a leader in this context that we've been talking about today? What type of leader is it going to require? So I think a lot about, we're living in a world where there's like a lot of complexity. So like, clarity from a leader, I think is becoming incredibly important. Like the wisdom of the leader, the clarity, the critical thinking, and probably the emotional connectivity, right? Emotional connection and empathy, compassion are skills that are going to become incredibly critical. And I think connected to leadership too is about, the pipeline of leader. When I think about my role in the organization, it's all about, securing the future by also making sure that we have the right leaders. And when I think about, potentially the impact of AI on entry-level roles, what is the potential impact of that on the leadership pipeline, and how do we need to think differently about, some of these entry-level jobs, to the question earlier, to help bridge a little bit of those gaps. So those are some of the few things that keep me up at night.
You got a lot on your mind. And Sarah, if you could wrap it up for us too, and what technological advancements are you kind of keeping an eye on that you think might be on the way? And then also at the same time, what's becoming obsolete?
Yeah, I'm really excited about computer vision and some of the, and applying, computer vision with the AI capabilities with that as well. So that's, we're continuing to lean in that space. And then in terms of things becoming obsolete, I would say from a safety perspective, it's not quite obsolete, but like I mentioned earlier, engineering out manual processes as much as we can. But I am excited, though, too, because of the advancements in technology as we're applying it to our operations. There are opportunities for upskilling across our workforce. We have a program called Career Choice where our teams are able to get new skill sets, learn new technologies through Amazon funding to do that. And so then we can then translate that new skill set to application of the technology across our workforce. So I'm really excited about the future, honestly. I think the best is yet to come, and stay tuned in this space from our perspective.
All right. Ladies, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Well, guys, that does it for all of our panel portions for today. First of all, I want to thank you for all hanging in and being such a great and engaged audience, because your questions do help out here. It makes our job a whole lot easier up here. I'd also like to thank Kyndryl as well for being our sponsor. If you would like some more information about them, head to our page and you could check on the resources tab and you'll be able to find some more information about them there. Also, if you want to rewatch any of this, if there was something you heard that you want to go back and listen to it again, just head to Bloomberg Live and you can search for Building a Future Ready Business. So you can go back and watch it all over again. With that, that concludes for today. I want to thank you. We have our networking reception as well. For those of you on the live stream, have a good night. Thank you.